Hello. A flashlight shines light into the darkness. Evolution, just like a flashlight, shines light on the unanswered questions of who we are and where we came from. Evolutionary theory provides an explanation for how we, as well as the creatures around us, evolved from our ancestors. As someone who has taken more science classes than I can count, I can accurately represent the theory of evolution, while the opponents of evolution believe that animals and creatures were created and placed onto Earth by a god or gods. I believe that evolution is a scientific theory with lots of research backing it up that provides an explanation for how we as human beings, as well as the other animals in nature, evolved from our ancestors. So, in order to discuss my 100% truth, which is the theory of evolution, I'll be bringing up some comments that the opposition has. One being that evolution is just a theory, another being that we can't see evolution occur, and the third being that we have no evidence of transitions between species. So first I'll shine some light on the statement that evolution is just a theory. Transition slides. So it is true, evolution is just a theory, but the word theory has two different meanings in these two statements. According to the Scientific American, a scientific theory is an explanation of some aspect of the natural world that has been substantiated through repeated experiments or testing. So in order for evolution to have become a scientific theory, it needed to go through lots of research, lots of testing, and lots of experiments that all point towards the same conclusion that evolution is true and that it does occur. Just like gravity, which is another theory, if you drop a bouncy ball from a skyscraper 1,000 times, the bouncy ball is going to fall from the skyscraper 1,000 times. Although our experiments for evolution aren't as simple and straightforward as dropping a bouncy ball from a skyscraper, they do point towards the same direction and the same conclusion, which is that evolution is true and that it does occur in nature. So we find that yes, evolution is a theory, but used in these terms, it's not just a theory. So next I'll shine some light on another statement, which is that we can't see evolution occur in action. Now, again, this is false. We are able to see evolution occur in action. Although we typically don't see macroevolution occur, which is very large changes in species or animals, we do witness microevolution, which is smaller changes in species or animals. One of the most famous pieces of research for microevolution is the Dark Fly Project. According to Nature, which is a scientifically backed, peer-reviewed journal that many famous scientists post their research in 1954, a Japanese ecologist placed a dark cloth over a captive colony of fruit flies. Some 1,500 generations later, researchers have now identified dozens of genetic variations that may help the fly's descendants to cope with life in total darkness. So we see as we change this environment of the fruit flies that the characteristics of the fruit flies start to change. So in this top picture that I included, you can see that this proboscis area on the bottom of the picture, it's the sensory organ. So in the 1500 generation, that sensory organ got larger and it got longer. The sensory hairs on the fruit fly, which you can also make out in the picture, also got longer, and the senses that weren't affected by the darkness, such as the sense of smell, also got heightened in the fruit flies. Another example of microevolution that we have is with the Galapagos finches. When Charles Darwin first visited the Galapagos Islands, the finches there were one of the species that helped him come up with his hypothesis of evolution. In the last 100 years, we have researchers on the Galapagos Islands that have been documenting these finches' beaks and the changes and how they change with the environment. So we notice as the environment of these finches changes, these beaks and the eating habits of the finches change, as well as other characteristics. And you might say, you know what, Dominic, a slightly smaller finch beak or a slightly larger sensory hair on a fruit fly doesn't make it a different creature. It doesn't make it a different species. And you're absolutely correct, it doesn't. But we see as generations go by, as tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of generations pass, that first generation, that first species, looks and acts completely different than that 100,000th generation, that 100,000th species. And in fact, if you try to breed the two, nothing will happen because they're two different species. They aren't capable of breeding. So we are able to see evolution, specifically microevolution, sometimes macro, but mainly micro, occur in action right in front of us. So third, I'm going to shine some light on another statement that the opposition has, and that is that we have no evidence for transitions. Transition side. So we do have evidence, just like the other two statements. This one is also false. We do have evidence for transitions in species. In other words, transitional creatures. One of the most famous pieces of evidence that we have is with the Archaeopteryx. The Archaeopteryx was a dinosaur that lived 125 million years ago, predominantly in modern-day Europe, but we find the most fossils in modern-day Germany. And this creature, this dinosaur, had two sets of characteristics, one of each different kind of animal. So according to the UC Berkeley's Museum of Paleontology, the Archaeopteryx had a full set of teeth, a flat sternum, and a long bony tail. However, its feathers, wings, and wishbone are all characteristics of modern-day birds. So we see with this Archaeopteryx that, yes, it was its own species, but we see characteristics of reptiles as well as characteristics of birds. So scientists today believe that this Archaeopteryx is the transition between the landlocked reptiles of the prehistoric time, of the dinosaurs, as well as characteristics of our modern day birds that are capable of flight, that are flying around our heads right now. So with these two sets of characteristics, this species, this Archaeopteryx, was a transition between reptiles into modern day birds. Now, I included a couple pictures of the Archaeopteryx. The top one is a picture of a Archaeopteryx fossil which was discovered in Germany. And if you look closely at the picture, there's little streaks coming out of the arms of the Archaeopteryx. And scientists believe that those little streaks are the fossilized remnants of the Archaeopteryx's feathers. I also included a artist's rendition of the Archaeopteryx. Although we aren't able to identify specific colors from fossils, we are able to come up with an idea of how the Archaeopteryx looked like when it was alive. Transition. So, in conclusion, I brought up some arguments, some comments that the opposition has to evolution. One being that evolution is just a theory, another being that we can't see evolution occur in real time, and the third, that we have no evidence of transitions between species, or of transitional species, which I brought up evidence to disprove. Now, I hope in my speech that I brought up enough research to explain why evolution is my 100% truth and why I so deeply believe in the theory of evolution. Now, I believe that in the future, just like a flashlight shining light into the darkness, evolution, as well as science in general, will shine a light on the unknown, the other unknown questions of who we are and where we came from. Thank you.